I never imagined that a single misunderstanding could shatter the bond between me and my son. My name is Linda Carter, and for most of my life, I thought I understood love, sacrifice, and family. But the day my son turned away from me, I realized how fragile relationships could be, even between a mother and her child. When my husband Mark passed away 5 years ago, our home in suburban Ohio fell silent. My son, Ethan, was only 16 then, old enough to understand death but too young to know how to cope with it. He changed overnight. He used to be cheerful, funny, always making jokes at dinner. But after the funeral, he stopped talking much. He spent hours in his room, music blaring, pretending to be fine. I tried everything to reach him. I cooked his favorite meals, stayed up late waiting for him to come home from basketball practice, and wrote little notes that I'd slip into his lunch bag. But his grief was quiet and angry, and I didn't know how to reach him through it. Years passed. Ethan graduated high school with decent grades and went off to college a few hours away. I told myself that the distance might help us both heal. Maybe we just needed space to start over. But when he came home during breaks, the tension was worse. He seemed cold, polite, like I was a stranger. One summer evening, he came home after his sophomore year. I was sitting on the porch, drinking tea, watching the sunset. I smiled when I saw his car pull up, but his face was distant. "Hey, Mom," he said flatly, carrying his duffel bag inside. That night, while making dinner, I asked, "How's school? How are your classes going?" "Fine," he replied, not looking up from his phone. Something inside me cracked. "Ethan, we never talk anymore. Do you even care how I'm doing?" He looked up, his eyes sharp. "You really want to know, Mom? You act like everything's fine, but you checked out the day Dad died." His words hit me like a punch. "That's not true," I whispered. He stood up from the table. "You were so busy trying to stay strong you forgot I was falling apart." He left the room before I could speak again. That night, I sat alone on the couch, clutching one of Mark's old sweaters, feeling like the worst mother alive. The next morning, I tried again. "Ethan," I said gently as he came into the kitchen, "I'm sorry for whatever made you feel that way. I never stopped caring. I just didn't know how to help you without falling apart myself." He sighed but said nothing. I noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "You've been under a lot of stress, haven't you?" I asked. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'm taking summer classes. I barely sleep." I reached out and touched his hand. "You don't have to carry everything alone." For the first time in years, his eyes softened. He nodded slightly and said, "Maybe I don't." Over the next few weeks, we began to talk more. We cleaned out the attic together and found old photo albums. I showed him pictures of Mark holding him as a baby, and we laughed over the ridiculous matching Christmas sweaters we used to wear. Then one weekend, Ethan mentioned that he was volunteering at a local physical therapy clinic for veterans. "It's part of my psychology major," he said. "We help them through emotional recovery." I was proud of him. He had grown into a compassionate young man despite everything. "That's amazing, sweetheart," I told him. "Your father would be proud." He smiled for the first time in a long while. A few days later, I twisted my ankle while carrying groceries up the porch steps. It wasn't serious, but it swelled quickly. Ethan ran over when he heard me yelp. "Mom, sit down," he said, helping me to the couch. I tried to wave him off, but he insisted on checking my ankle. "I've learned some basic therapy techniques," he explained. "Let me help." His touch was gentle, careful, professional, like someone who had practiced empathy. As he wrapped my ankle in a cold towel, I looked at him and realized how much he had grown. The boy who once stormed away from me was now patient, caring, and kind. "I'm sorry for how I treated you, Mom," he said suddenly. "I blamed you for things that weren't your fault." Tears welled in my eyes. "And I'm sorry for not being there the way you needed me to be." For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. It wasn't awkward, just full of everything we hadn't said for years. That summer became a turning point. We spent more time together, watching old movies, cooking dinner, going on walks by the lake. We talked about Mark, about life, about forgiveness. Ethan even opened up about his own struggles. He confessed that for years he'd felt lost and angry, unsure of who he was without his father. One night, while sitting on the porch again, he said, "Mom, I used to think you didn't care. But now I realize you were just trying to survive, too. I smiled through tears. We both were, Ethan. But maybe now we can live again. By the end of the summer, the house no longer felt heavy. When Ethan returned to college, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. I'll call more often, he promised. And he did. Every week, sometimes twice. We rebuilt what we'd lost piece by piece. 2 years later, Ethan graduated with honors and started working at a rehabilitation center. At his graduation ceremony, I cried openly as he walked across the stage. Afterward, he found me in the crowd, lifted me in a hug, and whispered, "You're my hero, Mom." I couldn't speak. All I could do was hold on to him, grateful that love had found its way back between us. Sometimes, healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in small, quiet moments, an apology, a shared laugh, a gentle hand on your shoulder. I had spent years thinking I'd lost my son, but what I really lost was the courage to reach for him. Now, when I look back, I don't feel guilt anymore. I feel peace, because I learned that even broken hearts can be mended, as long as love remains strong. Ethan still visits often. Every Sunday, we cook dinner together, his father's favorite recipe, roast chicken with rosemary. We laugh, we talk, and sometimes we sit in comfortable silence. Life isn't perfect, but it's real. It's filled with forgiveness, second chances, and the quiet understanding that even in our deepest pain, love never truly leaves us. And that's what I want anyone listening to my story to remember. No matter how far apart you grow from the people you love, it's never too late to heal.